Welcome to Season 4 of Creatively Speaking, Food for Thought. I'm your host, Leanna Weller-Smith, founder and executive creative director of Weller-Smith Design. In this episode, I'm excited to chat with therapist and author Minaa B. She shares her journey from childhood dreams of becoming an author to her current success with her book, Owning Our Struggles. Minaa talks about her experiences in the publishing world, getting a literary agent, and the surprises she faced along the way. Featured in Oprah Daily, Minaa's story shows how being genuine and using smart marketing can boost a book's reach. We'll also dive into how Minaa mixes pop culture and healing through her new media company, I'm So Mature, and learn about her new ventures in mental health and media. This episode is a must-listen for anyone interested in the publishing world and the power of meaningful stories. Let's get started. Hi, Minaa. Welcome to Creatively Speaking. I'm so excited to have you on the call today.
Hi, Leanna. Thank you for having me.
I was just saying right before we got on that it's like, finally, we're able to do this. It's been a crazy beginning of the year, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's definitely been a busy time for me. So I'm really happy we're finally able to get some time together.
Yes, this is great. I've been looking forward to this call. So I'll just let everyone know you and I met at a women's event. I think it was just the dinner. You could only attend part of that. It was a weekend long event. And we got to meet at the dinner, which was awesome. The creators of that event, they had put together this sort of like a mix and mingle type of thing where you were going around trying to search for people to fill out your little bingo card kind of thing. And we got to chatting, and I thought that was cool. And you're local to me, so I thought that was fun.
Yeah, same. It was a nice little way to get to meet people. So I'm happy we were two of the people that got connected and stayed in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things when we were talking is you had mentioned you had a cookbook, or not a cookbook. Sorry, I'm in cookbook land, but you mentioned you had a book, but I had gone to your website and I'm like, you were an author, you had all these things. And we started talking about, your path to a published product. And I was like, oh, this is so interesting because you didn't have to go through a lot of the same scenarios that like the traditional author goes through. So I thought that was really interesting. But before we dive all the way over there, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience. Let everyone know a little bit about who you are and what you do, and I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, well, my name is Minaa B. I am a therapist, author of the book Owning Our Struggles, and I am a mental health educator who helps brands, organizations, and universities bridge the gap between mental health, culture, and community care. I have been featured in a variety of places from Katie Couric Media to Oprah Daily, Essence, BBC, and other places. And a big part of my work is really helping people be rooted in who they are and understand themselves through the mental health concepts that I talk about. I'm also the founder of I'm So Mature, which is a media company that bridges pop culture, music, and personal healing. And we explore how art and entertainment can be forms of healthy escapism that guide us on our journey to self-discovery and emotional growth. So right now, the media company is in phase 1, which is the flagship newsletter, which can be found on Substack. And I am the primary writer of the newsletter. So those are the different ways that people can understand my work, learn from me and my work. But those are also all of the different things that I do.
Yeah, it's amazing. You've been busy. I mean, like we were saying, I think this first quarter went by so fast, and no wonder you've had your hands in all these things. So I'm curious, when you were, just working with your daily to-dos, right? Were you always thinking about doing a book initially, or how did the idea of becoming a published author come about for you?
I've always wanted to be a published author, and that dates back to childhood. So I will say that I'm very grateful that it came to fruition, but it wasn't something that just popped up in my adult life, and it wasn't something that I said to myself, oh, this would be a convenient thing to do. I never thought of it as a lucrative thing to do. It was always a creative project for me. and something that I would say was just rooted in my love for reading, but also writing. So it definitely dates back to my childhood dream. And I would say because as a kid, I always loved to read, that pretty much sparked my interest in wanting to write.
I feel like a lot of the authors that we've talked with in some way, shape, or form, this is something that came from, throughout even childhood, like you said, even for myself, which is interesting. When I was in, I think it was third grade, and we got to design our own book. And so it's kind of even interesting from back then, like I've always even just been interested in the design aspect of it. We got to write and design our own book. It was bound, hand bound, and then the library put all of our books in the school library, and I still have it. It was like about bananas because it was just like Leanna Banana. And yeah, I feel like authorship is definitely something that comes from deep within. Either that or else there's a moment that then an author is born from some sort of event or something that happened in their life. So there's always some sort of deep rooted thing there though that sparks it. Now, when you did start to go down the path, what prompted you for writing the book that you did write?
Well, I got the idea for my book during the year of 2020. So that probably says a lot. I think what happened is I remember getting the idea for the book around the fall of 2020. So most of the year had already happened. And since a lot of my work as a social worker and a therapist is community care focused, I felt like the year of 2020 was a time where a lot of people felt disconnected, and instead of having the fundamental resources that they need to engage in community care and understand collectivism and understand collective healing, we were in many ways being taught to isolate, to withdraw, and to see people as dangerous. And I think my main concerns around that time was, now when the pandemic orders are lifted, how are we going to reintegrate back into society? And I think when I was also watching some trends happening on social media, I could see how the isolation was really impacting people's mental health. And so I was more so on a mission of, if people needed a resource, what is a tool that they could use to learn how to, one, practice community care, but also utilize community care frameworks as a way to heal from their trauma, especially if there is interpersonal trauma. I find that trauma does impact the relationships we build and the relationships that we're trying to sustain. So it was more so coming from a place of, this is all the stuff happening in society, and I wonder if I could create a solution to some of the pain points people have. And that is pretty much what prompted the core premise of that book, Owning Our Struggles.
Wow, yeah. I think that was that time, like it's crazy to actually have lived through this, right? Like, I mean, who would have thought that this would happen at this time, especially with all the advances that we have in healthcare, just all these things. Like, how did this happen? But the effects that it's had, especially on, families, relationships, children. Like my son, him and his friends, I think they were probably, it was like, I think it was like seventh, or it was like eighth grade going into ninth grade kind of thing. And that's like a very pivotal time for teenagers, right? Like they're already stressed out and self-conscious. And then to go behind, to then disappear and then to come back into reality, like, abruptly, like not like disappear abruptly, but then also come back abruptly. It was hard. Like a lot of kids, and there were a lot of kids that really had a hard time integrating back in. And I really felt for them because you couldn't just do the all suck it up kind of thing, which is what people kind of default to a lot of the times. But I had downloaded the audiobook, and I was listening to it, and I thought the recording was great, and I just felt like it was very insightful. I had passed it around to a few other family and friends because I do feel like the topics in here are very important and needs to be talked about even more. So from that, your idea came, and then what were the next steps that you took to then try to get this in front of people?
I was introduced to my agent, so that was very, very helpful.
Mhm.
And the interesting part was the person who introduced me to my agent, when they sent my agent's information over to me, I had already actually had that agent saved in my wish list, on my wish list of agents I wanted to work with. So I was like, okay, this feels like divine timing because the fact that I'm also being referred to her, in any industry, I think a referral it speaks volumes about the person referring you and also you, that the person being referred, right? So I remember thinking to myself, okay, like this person is on my wish list. I have to make sure that my proposal is where it really needs to be. But I will say that because I was managing so many other projects, my proposal wasn't necessarily complete. So when she introduced me to the agent, I remember saying to the agent, hey, I just want to let you know that I want to be mindful and respectful of your time. I am currently working on a proposal. It is halfway done. So please let me know if you prefer that I wait until it's complete to send it to you, or if you'd like to see the half written proposal. And I just felt like that was a more kind way to approach the situation because I didn't want to say, hey, this is what I have. And then the agent read it and they're like, this is not a complete proposal. So I wanted to let the agent know that I was respectful of her time. And I just also knew the nature of her work, which is why I put it out there and just said, listen, I'm very happy to be connected with you. This is what I'm focusing on. This is the premise of the book that I want to write, but the proposal just isn't complete yet. Luckily, she wanted to see it. And she was the one who actually helped me really drill into the core concept of the book after she read the proposal, because the proposal that I had did have a writing sample in it already. So it was more so like the marketing tactics and all of those other logistical things weren't fully ready yet, but the writing sample was complete. I do want to say that.
Okay.
So she had an ability to read my writing style and understand the nature of my work as a writer. So she read it and she gave me some feedback, and I implemented the feedback she gave me. So she did say, hey, these are some thoughts that I have. These are some things that came up while reading it. I want to have a better understanding of the direction that you're trying to go in. What are you trying to achieve? And this is what came up for me as I was reading it. Would you be willing to maybe make some revisions, sit with it for about a month and a half, and then get back to me? So she gave me an actual deadline and I said, that's perfect. And I remember completing everything she asked me to work on and fleshing certain things out. And I submitted the proposal back to her and she was excited about it. So she signed me. So that was my story in the context of getting an agent. So I will say, luckily, I did not have to sort through
Yeah.
50 emails and send out a bunch of pitches. Like my first go at it, I got signed, which I know could be a sense of luck because, again, I was referred to her. I don't know what that process would have been like if I was a cold pitch in her inbox. So I will say, like, that is how the process went. And I know traditionally for some people, that's not generally how things go.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I had a wish list. So I had tons of people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I had like tons of people on that list, but she was one of them. So I'm really lucky that it worked out the way that it did.
Yeah, and that's something what you're touching on by saying that you had a long list. That's what authors should be doing, and for every piece of the puzzle when it comes to a book is looking at, what age, especially, if you see a book that you love or an author that you love and you look in their acknowledgments page, like a lot of them, they acknowledge their agents, they acknowledge their editors and different people that they worked with, whether it's maybe a photographer. So doing that research too, of just knowing who you would really want to work with, that's really valuable for anyone that is an aspiring author. And because then at least you have a baseline of where to go. But yeah, for you to really connect with her and she connect with your writing. And I also think too, she gave you a deadline and you did what she asked you to do. I think that also plays into the fact that she knows you're going to do the work, which is also really important. how long did you end up working with her to like really like flesh out anything else with the proposal? Like after she signed you, but did you guys have like a certain amount of time to then kind of refine it further, or
We
how did that
did.
work?
So we
Yeah.
did. After she signed me, we had our initial call. So she walks me through the process and her expectations and all of those different things. And then she did start off with giving me a deadline, but also helped me understand, like, okay, so these are the logistical things I would like to see in a full proposal. So I'm going to say her deadline was probably 2 months to get everything done. But I will say that after I submitted the proposal, she came back to me. I'm going to say maybe it took her about 3 weeks. So she came back to me with her feedback. And I remember reading her feedback, making some of the edits. And then I said to her, how would you feel if I actually started from scratch? Yeah. So I had like a very unique journey. So she was so confused by that because she's like, what are you talking about?
She's like, am I talking to the right person?
Right. She's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I want to be honest with you. And so to pause here really quickly, to give people more context.
Mhm.
So again, I submitted the whole proposal, meaning I also submitted a writing sample in alignment with the particular project that I was pitching, which is this book, Owning Our Struggles. So I already had the chapter outlines. I already had a description of what I wanted the core premise of the book to be about. And then I had a writing sample. And the writing sample I remember choosing was chapter 1. So she did all of the edits to chapter 1, pretty much everything in the logistical side, such as the description, the chapter outline, all of that was fine. That didn't really need much editing. But she did edit the chapter outline. And that's when I remember saying, hey, like, what if I did this whole chapter over? Like, what if I just ditched this whole writing sample? And she was like, well, I don't think you need to do that. Like my edits weren't like that rigorous. And I was like, actually, no. It has nothing to do with your edits. The reason why I'm having this revelation is because this is my first time writing a book. And I think I put so much pressure on myself when it came to writing this sample that I feel like I wrote in a voice that is not true to who I am and it's not authentic to my writing style. So when preparing to write this writing sample, I was doing a lot of reading and I was noticing a particular type of theme in the self-help mental health books that I was reading. And I remember thinking to myself, do I have to write this way to get a book deal? So I forced myself to write in a way that is not true to me. And the fact that it took a lot out of me to write this one chapter, and you're telling me I'm going to have to write a 65,000 word book, and this was only like 3,000 words, and I have 60,000 plus to go. There is no way I can keep up in this voice because I don't like this voice. So I had to have my own coming to terms with myself through writing that book proposal. Because again, it was my first time writing a book. I know she's going to pitch this book to big top, the top 5 indie publishers. So many people are going to have an opportunity to see it. So I think I was just so nervous that I wanted it to appease people and I wanted to, I guess, fit into a particular mold. But then when I thought of the long-term consequence of that, I was just like, if it took this much effort to write this one writing sample, do you really think you can keep up with this writing the rest of the book? And that's when I was real with myself. And I was like, no, because I don't like how I wrote this writing sample. Like, is it good? Yes. But am I talking in the tone that I want to talk in? No. Am I utilizing the metaphors or just the different ways of expression that I want to write about? No. I felt like I just really touched upon the surface and I wrote in a manner that felt very generic. And I know that's not me. So my agent was like, I completely understand what you mean. And so if you don't feel like this came from your heart, I want you to write the writing sample that comes from your heart. Don't focus on what other authors are doing. Focus on who Minaa B is and the type of writing you want the world to read when they read your books. So I changed the whole entire writing sample and I got a book deal from it. I got a book deal from the writing sample that came from my heart. So that was an eye-opening fact for me. But I am going to say, because I interfered with the process,
Right.
of course, it went a little longer because all I had to do was make the edits she gave me the first round and we would have been done. But I will say she gave me about 5 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks to revise my writing sample. And then it took her about 2 to 3 weeks to edit my new writing sample. So I do remember getting signed in January of 2021, and we didn't start pitching my book until June. So we wrapped my book up in May and started pitching the book in June. So I would say roughly 5 months of working on the proposal.
Yeah. And, congratulations to you for speaking up, and because advocating for yourself, like sometimes it's hard to do, especially when you feel like, but what if I don't get that? But what if I don't get this then because I'm changing, or I'm changing that voice and tone, but to stay true to you is so important. And I think going back to something I said earlier, which is I loved the audiobook, and I think that was, and it was very much because of how you spoke, and just like you said, the metaphors, the stories, the tone, everything, it really resonated with me. And so I think that decision, without me even knowing what your first chapter sounded like initially, I was drawn to the way that it was written, and then spoken. So I think that's a great insight on your side to say, I just feel like this isn't the right direction. And I think, it's great for authors to advocate for themselves. We've had other authors that said maybe it was something to do with their intro, or maybe it was like an acknowledgement, or things that really meant a lot to them. And it's good for you to stand up for those elements, and that she was very supportive as well, which is fantastic. And I will also just say too, another point is the length that you mentioned. I find that very typical for a lot of the authors we've spoke with that have worked with agents, because it takes time. It takes time to, get it right. They know what a good agent knows, what to ask and what to pull out of you for those proposals. And so 5 to 6 months is even for some just the beginning. So it depends on, really how in depth and intense the product is, that is going to be. How many publishers did she pitch for you?
That's a good question. I actually do not remember. This was quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
But I will say I remember having about maybe 6 meetings in total. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that's all she pitched to, because she could have pitched to others that declined on the project.
Mhm.
So that's why I don't fully remember the total amount of people that she necessarily pitched to. But I do know I had about 6 meetings with 6 different publishers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It was a lot. It was
Yeah, that's a lot. So were you offered several offers, or did you just get one? Like, how did that process work?
Yeah, so I did get several offers, and I actually, after meeting with a particular publisher, I knew I wasn't interested in going in that direction. So my agent took care of that. So there was no expectation of me getting an offer from them, since I knew right after the meeting that I didn't feel like there was much alignment with the publisher. But I did get multiple offers. So that was very exciting for me to have all those meetings and
Yeah.
see that multiple people were interested. So I believe there were about 4 offers that came in. And like I said, one of them I pretty much had disclosed right after the meeting that I don't think this is going to work. So of course, no offer came in. And I do believe there was one organization that wanted to go in a different direction, and I had some pushback. And as a result of that, there was no offer. I'm making the assumption that that is why.
Yeah.
There was no offer. Yeah.
So do you feel like you landed with the right publisher for you? Like, I know some people are like, oh, so I'm curious, like, were you happy with where you landed?
I was happy with where I landed. It was my dream to work. So for people who may not be aware of where I landed, I was signed to Tarcher Perigee, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House. And it was my dream to work with Penguin, and it also was a dream of mine to work with Tarcher. The reason why is because I know Tarcher has produced a lot of well-known books in the mental health space that I've read. But of course, Penguin has other amazing imprints, so I wouldn't have cared, to be honest, which imprint I landed at, but I, but I was a bit more familiar with the Tarcher imprint. So I was very happy, with the outcome. I think once you get into it, there's a lot that you learn about the publishing world. And I can't say that I would have had a better experience anywhere else because you can only choose one publisher. So I could have had an amazing experience at another imprint or even with a different publisher. But to just speak to that one experience that I had, it was a really good experience.
That's great. So I'm curious about within the proposal, like a lot of people, they focus on platform. How was that for you? Did they kind of have certain expectations of platform? Were those part of your conversations too once you did get signed?
I'm going to say it wasn't necessarily a part of my conversation. And I guess it was because by the time I got signed, I did have a robust platform. I remember I had over 100K followers on Instagram. I already had a newsletter list. I pretty much had a social media presence, and I was also getting a lot of press opportunities. And they were also aware that I was getting a lot of speaking engagements. So because they already knew that, especially since that's something we talked about during the initial meeting before I got signed, I wouldn't necessarily say that it was a big part of the conversation. I will say, though, it is typical that after you get signed with the publisher, they send you like a questionnaire. And on that questionnaire, they do want to know about your social media following. They do want to know if you have any speaking engagements. Are you signed to a speaking agency, a PR company, a marketing agency, whatever? They do want to know that. And they also want to know how you plan on leveraging your platform to sell books. So even if it's not necessarily a part of the conversation, once you get that questionnaire, it helps you understand that is on their radar.
Yeah.
So that is something that I had to fill out, and I had to put some detailed information around the gigs that I had, as well as the gigs that were coming up. And they also wanted to know what brands or organizations or even institutions I was affiliated with, because that could help leverage the book as well.
Did they include any kind of PR package with the work that you did with them? Like, did they have that kind of thing planned as well?
Yeah, so PR naturally came with the contract. I mean, I can't say every publishing house, but at least with Penguin, or at least with Tarcher, there is a marketing team, there is a PR team, there is a creative team. So you do have people who are helping you strategically put some things together. I will say that there are some people, I did not do this, but there are people who hire PR teams on top of the PR that they get from their publisher. I chose not to hire outside PR, and I did more so lean on the contacts that I already had and the PR contacts that I already had from previous engagements while utilizing Tarcher's PR team.
Oh, okay. I think that's a great way to go too, because if you already have that momentum with your personal connections, it keeps it kind of clean in a way too. Like it's not like you're then kind of coming at it from way almost too many angles. And since they had, part of the team was doing some of that as well, that's fantastic. Because some publishers, they just have limited capabilities just because they're stretched thin. So publishing isn't like, there's not like tons of extra people in there doing all the work with, 30, 40 books that are being published every year. Right. So they do have their limitations. Was there anything surprising while you went through the process as a first time author, something that you were like, oh, I wasn't expecting this, or this was a pleasant surprise, or, oh gosh, how did this happen? Like, were there any of those moments along the way?
That's a really good question. I think first I didn't fully understand how publishing worked. I think it's an industry that I studied, of course, but you don't really immerse yourself into it until you get the opportunity to be a part of it, right? So you can try to immerse yourself through Google articles and listen to all the podcasts in the world, but until you get signed. There's a lot you're exposed to. So I think for me, some key moments were realizing how much I really still need to depend on my audience and my marketing efforts to push the book. Because again, yes, I had a marketing team, I had a PR team, but they are stretched thin. And so it's not at the scale that some people think it is. So a lot of efforts really do fall on the author to continue to push their book. I would say that. I also think, when it's time to push for pre-orders, I learned a lot during that process. And I think if I, decide to write a second book, then there's a lot more that I learned through this process. I would say this more fell on the consumer end. I think authors really have to do a good job at educating their audience on why pre-orders are important, because I remember getting a lot of feedback of, oh my God, I really want to read your book. I'm going to wait until it's on sale.
Oh.
And, that's not helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, they want those numbers to see what the demand is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that was a lot of feedback I was getting. And I learned that you really have to just be upfront and let your audience know why you're pushing for those pre-sale orders. So please encourage them to order during that pre-sale window. And also what I did not know was that apparently they don't get charged for the book until they receive it. So there are some people who probably don't want to order the book because they're thinking they're probably spending the $28 right now. But if your book is coming out in 5 months, when it's time for the book to be shipped is when they're actually being charged. So I think a lot of education to the audience is important.
Yeah.
Because I think many consumers may just not understand the book world. They don't understand that you need to pre-order, especially if you want to hit a list. So I think the more transparency you give your audience, the better the outcome. And that's something that I learned, to just invite people on the journey. And it's what I would do with my next book. I would do that a bit more strategically, just because I think for me, I was very focused on order my book, pre-sales, but I don't think I did enough educating as I realized I should have done, when I realized what was making people buy, was what was hindering them from buying, and different things like that.
Yeah, it is a specific window.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting because what you said, even I didn't even think about the whole fact that, I mean, you don't get billed until it actually ships, which is also really good information, because just like you said, people are worried that, oh, I'm going to pay for this now. I'm going to forget about it, or I'm not even going to remember it. And then, but then what if I don't get it and I didn't track it? Or, there's all these things that go through the consumer's mind, especially when it comes to pre-sales, they just get all hung up on things. So I think that's a really good tip, is to at least be even more transparent about the whole process, and then how it works once they do order that book. It is an interesting time. I found from a lot of traditionally published authors, they said exactly what you did, which is you just don't know until you're behind the veil, right? Like you just, then you see all the things, and it is eye-opening because it's so secretive as to what's going to happen once your book gets picked up. So
yeah. But I want to add too that sometimes it can be secretive, but I also feel that, and this is what I learned because I have a lot of friends who are authors, I had such unique experiences that were so different from them.
yeah.
So I feel like now that I'm immersed in this world, there's a part of me that kind of understands how it can appear gatekeeping,
Mm-hmm.
when the reality is, I do believe that every author is going to have a completely different experience. And so my advance, my PR team, my outcomes might look extremely different from another peer. And I think that's why it seems so murky to people, because it's like no one is giving concrete information. But now that I'm in it, I realize it's really hard
Yeah.
to answer specific questions. I feel like the only questions you can really answer are your questions pertaining to your experience.
Yeah.
And you might find that the experience you heard from author A sounds drastically different from the experience they had with author B, and they might be signed to the same imprint. I say that just to offer some people some hope.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like people, I've heard it before where people feel like the publishing industry can be very gatekeepy, and understand there are some things that I feel like the publishing world could be a bit more transparent about. But at the same time, I think there is a lack of transparency due to the fact that it's so distinct per person that it's hard to give blanketed statements on how certain things are going to go.
Yeah, that's really well said, because that is what this whole season of Creatively Speaking is about. It's called Food for Thought, and it really is about the different paths to a published product.
Yeah.
And it could be not only through traditional publishing, self-publishing, hybrid publishing. Everyone has a different story, and I think it is inspiring, because then people can feel like it's not a straight line and it's going to be different for everyone. But there is the starting point that's the same. Like, everyone starts at some point, and then there's a published or printed product at the end. But the way that you get there, it really just depends on how it all kind of unfolds for you.
Yeah. And I do think it's about from the start to the finish too, because I think the starting point starts with your agent. And as I shared earlier, like, I got referred to my agent and I never had to cold pitch myself, and I got signed 2 months after knowing my agent, right? Like, I know so many people who have gone through so many agents, like pitching and rejection after rejection after rejection. So even that process was unique to me.
Yeah, it's very unique. Yeah. So, I mean, the book seems like it's doing well. It's had a lot of really great press and a lot of great placements and things like that. So I'm assuming then it was a combination between your connections and the team. But was there anything that was like maybe a special, like something that was a exciting placement that you received, or anything like that was a surprise even?
Yeah, I was actually really excited about my feature in Oprah Daily, especially because it was an interview feature. So the fact that, I appreciate Jane. She was the person who interviewed me. And, I think to have a interview spread on Oprah Daily is a big deal.
Yeah. I
And so, yeah, I would say that when I saw that offer come through, that was actually very, very exciting for me. And my team is the one that secured that, by the way. So that was not a part of my initial connections. I don't have connections to Oprah Daily. So that was actually like the highlight of my press opportunities.
Did you see any sort of direct correlation from these appearances to sales at all? Were you guys able to track anything like that? Do you know? Or maybe even website views or followers? Did it impact any bit of the business ecosystem?
I'm going to say that I don't necessarily have the data on that. I do know that one of the things I learned during that time period was that podcasts tend to move the needle a lot when it comes to books. And I will say, after my book published for a few months, my podcast episodes were still releasing. And I was noticing a correlation between podcast episodes airing and maybe within a week or two seeing a spike in sales. So I will say I do think there was a direct correlation between podcasts and sales, especially because the other press that I got went live during Pub Week.
Oh,
So at least I knew so that's why it also was a little hard, because it's like, well, which, for example, website or podcast or which particular medium is driving the sales. I didn't have access to that data. Maybe Penguin does, but I didn't get access to it. But at least I did know that once the hype kind of died down and a month went by and I was still on podcasts and podcasts were still airing, I knew that that was my main press that was going live. So I was able to know it was like a direct correlation between this episode aired, then they repurposed the episode on social media, and now I'm seeing a spike in sales. So that's data that I was able to collect.
that's really interesting too, because I know like podcasting, like podcast episodes and appearances really, we have our podcast and we get to, share these with our community, but I do feel like it's like, more so now, like over the last 5 years or so, that I think podcasting has really, or podcast episodes and appearances have really helped people to move the needle, and especially when it comes to visibility and sales and getting in front of the right audiences too.
Yeah, so I would definitely recommend that to authors. Like, if you can get on as many podcasts as possible, it
Yeah.
really is helping to move the needle because you're providing your expertise, and it's a sense of intimacy that
Mhm.
your audience is getting from you. So that's definitely helping book sales.
So aside from just being more clear when it came to that pre-sales window of time, is there anything you would have changed once you went into the launch and post-launch time of the book?
I will be honest and say that I do wish that I strategized better when it was time to gear it for the pre-sale window. In my personal life, I had something come up pretty much right when pre-sale was about to go live, and I remember experiencing such severe burnout that I really just was so drained that I didn't have the energy or the capacity to give it my all. I'm being honest. Because that personal situation took up so much space, but honestly, mentally and emotionally. So I think strategically, what I shared earlier was that I would do more educating because I feel like I did educate my audience, but I realized I needed to educate them more because a lot of people didn't understand the value of pre-sale. And again, it makes sense. They're just like, the book is going to come out anyway. I'll just wait for 5 months and buy the book. Where for us, we're like, no, I need those numbers. I would love to hit a list. Like, the author is focused on a completely different goal than the consumer. So I do feel like more people need to be educated around why they should be engaging in pre-sale. I also think that I would be a bit more strategic regarding how I would be promoting the book. I did my best, of course, and I'm not like disappointed with the outcome. But like I said, I think because I was managing a lot of things, what I probably would have done is hire a team, even if it's not PR. But I think around that time, I had a virtual assistant, for example, and I, in retrospect, I feel like I should have been giving her more tasks pertaining to the book compared to company logistics, right? So just shifting how things go, or even just hiring an assistant, hiring a creative director, hiring someone just for that 5 month period, like a temporary contract. I think that could be really, really helpful. And this is something that, I'll put out there for people who are listening is, I did have meetings with PR companies as well. And I chose not to go in that direction, but there are so many people who do. And so I do think that maybe even if you don't work with a PR team, working with some marketing team could be really helpful because marketing a book is its own beast. And so sometimes, again, you need a support system. You need an assistant that's just focusing on the book. You need a director that's giving you all of the information that you need to market the book. So you need someone that's just there for the book itself. And again, it's just a 5 month period. So it's temporary. And I would consider that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. We had another author on and she said that was the best money that she spent. And because it just took it off of her brain. Like she didn't have to think of all these moving parts. And they weren't PR. They were literally managing the process. Like they were making sure that, all of the events that she was going to were all lined up, that she had everything she needed, that there were like, doing all of that type of thing, and then making sure it all ran smoothly too. Like, so having somebody in some capacity that can really help you is super valuable. Yeah. So from the book, it's now that since it's been out for a while now, like, has this provided extra or new opportunities for you in the business, and has it brought anything else around for you?
That is a good question. I haven't stopped marketing Minaa B
Mm-hmm.
ever since the book has come out. So I have gotten plenty of opportunities. after the book came out, there are some people who have found me because they read my book. So for speaking engagements, honestly, even clients who come to see me in therapy have read my book. But it's also a direct correlation of knowing me on social media, being at an event where I spoke, and then choosing to order my book. So I will say, because I've been able to keep up with my brand, it's worked out for me where both things are so interconnected that I'm finding people from my book, but then I'm also finding people from other mediums who, once they find me, whether again, speaking engagement, newsletter, whatever, and now they're interested in ordering the book as well. So I will say that opportunities have definitely come, have continued to flourish ever since the book published.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great to hear. And tell me, like, you're moving off into other directions now too. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing now, like, because that's new to me. When you told me, when I looked at I was like, wait a second, she's doing something new. So share with us what are you up to now, Mina?
Yeah, so I recently founded I'm So Mature, which is a media company that bridges pop culture, music, and personal healing. And we explore how art and entertainment can be forms of healthy escapism that guide us on our journey to self discovery and emotional maturity. So, what I'm doing is pretty much helping people tap into particular touch points, such as media, to enhance their mental health. So phase one of the media company is the flagship newsletter, which is hosted on Substack. I send a newsletter out every Monday and then every Friday. And so a piece that I just sent out was called 5 Ways the TV show Insecure Shows Us the Spectrum of Friendship. So literally utilizing relatable touch points like TV shows, Insecure, for example, and utilizing how Insecure highlights the way friendships falls on a spectrum. How Issa Rae has Molly as a best friend, but then she also has Tiffany and Kelly in her circle. And she may not necessarily call Tiffany, for example, when she's super depressed or dealing with a breakup or having a hard time. She may not even call Kelly when she needs a favor, when she's struggling, but they're people who are a part of her community and they provide some sense of value and support, and each friend has a different role that they play. And so I'm utilizing the media that we're engaging with so that people can digest mental health in a more playful way, but also in a more humorous way. And the reason why I started this is because I feel like, especially in the world of social media, it's gotten to a place where a lot of people are taking care of themselves to the point where it's almost as if they're losing the art of having fun and they're losing their childlike ways of engaging in play and curiosity. And despite that, I also see that streaming services are still on the rise. Box office tickets are still on the rise. And so it shows us that people still have an interest in art and entertainment. And what if we were able to see how our lives are mirrored in the things that we consume? So when we want to talk about boundaries, why don't we watch a show like Sweet Magnolias and see how they handle situations related to conflict resolution, how they have healthy conversations, how they manage people-pleasing behaviors, but also how they erect boundaries in a compassionate and empathetic way, but also how they model sisterhood and how even in sisterhood there's conflict, but they also find ways to resolve those conflict, right? So it's just really finding different mediums that we all engage in, but specifically for I'm So Mature, I'm focusing on music, pop culture, and the TV shows and the movies that we watch, again, because those numbers aren't declining. They're not going anywhere. And so how can we make engaging with this content educational, useful, but also fun?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I can't wait to follow it. I was like, even just the little intro blurb on the Substack page, I was like, oh, I can't wait to chat about this. And this is so timely. And I think people really want to talk about this stuff because have you seen the Netflix show Adolescence?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that on TikTok has gone crazy. Like, because people are like, they're dissecting it, just like what you're doing with other, show or, pop culture shows and things like it, things that are similar. But it's interesting because people are actually like paying attention now. And I think it's like the perfect time for this initiative of yours to be launched because people are finally opening their eyes to some of this and seeing like they're paying attention. So I think it's like perfect timing for all of that.
Thank you. And I'm really excited about it. You know, even as you speak about adolescence, I learned recently that the British Prime Minister is working with Netflix on an initiative to have adolescents be shown in high schools to educate teenagers. So this is what I mean, where I'm like, we can literally use the art that we
Yeah.
consume as educational frameworks. You know, what if we did that here in America? What if children in America are watching shows around gun violence or watching shows around bullying, watching shows like Adolescents and utilizing that as curriculum? I remember when I was in grad school, to talk about human behavior, I did a whole thesis on Breaking Bad and focused on Jesse Pinkman. So
Yeah.
I have always had a love for watching these different concepts show up in the characters that we're engaging with on TV. And so that's what I'm So Mature really is all about. And so, like I said, phase one is just a newsletter, but I have so many plans for it to grow into a full-fledged media company. So I will be producing podcasts as one step. And the next step also would be to launch live events. And then the final step would be to get more in the television arena. But right now, we're focusing on the flagship newsletter to then launch the podcast and events. So there's so much more. So I encourage you to stay tuned.
Yeah, that's awesome, Mina. Oh, congratulations on all the
Thank you.
successes. It's cool to see how it's all kind of coming together in a way, you know, as well. And I can't wait to watch it evolve. So before we go, I know you gave a great synopsis of where people could find you at the beginning, but please tell everyone again where they can find you, how they can connect with you. And then if there's any last words that you would like to say, I would love for you to share.
Yeah, well, for if you want to connect with me, I also have a podcast. It's wherever you listen to your podcast, and the name of my podcast is Mindful with Mina. You can also find me with the name Minaa B, Minaa B, on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Threads. And most importantly, you can go to imsomature.substack.com to subscribe to my newsletter. And I think my last thought that I would share with people is to just trust the process of being a writer, stay in your truth as a writer, be authentic when it comes to your writing voice and your writing style, and continue to believe in yourself as you get through this journey.
Great way to end this session. So thank you so much, Mina, for being here and good luck with everything.
Thank you, Leanna.